Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live and I'm Cyril Stober. The continued strike by tertiary institutions of learning has perpetually remained the bane of education, especially in the public education system, with Nigerian universities on the front burner. Now, in the more than 5-month strike, several agreements reached, and the ASU position for the adoption of the University Transparency and Accountability Solution UTAS are some of the issues begging for negotiations. Tonight, Tuesday Live will focus on the prolonged ASU strike, the impact on education, and the future of the Nigerian youths. After all, many sides of the story have already been told, and what you might call the victims of the strike, or who you might refer to as the victims, are eager to return to school. But just before we go on tonight's discussion, let's get to see this report put together by correspondent Emmanuel Ayimiru.
14th, 2022 would have been a day of celebration of love, but for students in the nation's public university, it turned out to be a day that the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, began a warning strike, which now lasted for more than 5 months. The strike by ASU, however, has since sent signals to the Non-Academic Staff Union of Educational and Associated Institutions, NASU, National Association of Academic Technology, NATH, and the Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities, SANU, and other tertiary institutions who have at one time or another done too. ASU's demand bordered primarily on the 2009 agreement and other issues of conditions of service, wages, allowances, and other public service matters, just like the other 3 unions in the university.
Okay, me personally, it has affected me in a whole lot of ways because I've been in 100 level since 2019 and I just entered 200 level. We are still taking our exams. We are still happy we've entered 200 level, taking our exams. They called the strike.
Now, because of the whole strike, we're at home now. We don't have this due to read again because I have a cousin that is about to write jam. She doesn't see the need to write jam because the school is not in section, so she cannot. There's no need writing the jam because obviously she's still sitting at home.
Several meetings were held to resolve the impasse, after which relevant federal government ministries and agencies were set up to find lasting solutions to the problems, including a 7-member committee to negotiate ASU's agreement headed by Professor Nimi Briggs Committee. Another high-level committee headed by the Chief of Staff to the President, MDAs, and religious leaders at a Travata Plus negotiation meeting with the aggrieved university workers on the 12th of May only lasted with the unions bearing their minds.
Let's just agree on the principles and determine where progress has been made. Please, let's be frank and admit it that we made progress. And you yourself, President of ASU, have said there has been areas of progress. So, concretely, what are the areas left? How do we address and move them forward? And I've not heard you say, how do we, the objective is to return to the classrooms. Yes, government is a continuum, but this government, this admin will not commit to things that will not be implementable. And then who gains just by signing on to a paper that has no chance of being implemented?
from the MOU we signed in 2020. You still here. All these issues we have here today, they are here, and we have agreed on all the issues. They are here. I believe that this problem can be resolved within 3 days if the will is there from both sides.
We are also interested in the very quick resolution of the impasse, and I think it's possible. If all of us are committed, I think it will not take more than 24 hours actually to be committed to resolve this issue, because it's a very serious issue. Whether we like it or not, it's something that affects the future of our children.
Appeals were made, but till now, the unions are adamant on their demands.
And the only and the best way is to go back to the classroom, and then we continue negotiation, and we continue sitting together until the final solution is attained, and it's not impossible.
Please consider backing them. A bit you have spoken, and you have spoken loud and clear.
The alleged recently reached collective bargaining agreement between the federal government and ASU. Here is the latest.
2 issues now outstanding. One is UTAS. As they are doing UTAS, the other university unions, SANU and NASU, wrote us last year and said we have also gotten our own platform for payment of our members.
Different from IPPRS.
Different from IPPRS.
Different from UTAS.
And different from UTAS. We now said, even if UTAS is 100% good, which it is not for now, whenever it has attains 100% and is going to be deployed, we will not go onto it. We deploy only lecturers. Increase for countries only. They will be added to the present university wage bill 420 billion. It comes down from 560. If you reduce that of the countries, which are the other unions, SANU, NASU, technologies, and it will come down to this. And you add it to an existing 405 billion, you are talking about 800 and something billion additional.
Annual.
And when you add it on the present 3172 billion, you are talking about it a trillion plus.
5 months of total shutdown of the nation's public university has no doubt impacted negatively on students, parents, and the system as a whole. Emmanuel Ayemiro, NTA News.
Well, the report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let's start off by introducing our guests. We'd like to welcome to this program Dr. Mahmoud Osman. He's a public affairs analyst. He joins us from our Kanu studio. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much, sir. Glad to be with you. Thank you very much.
Also welcome to this program, Dr. Ahmed Sanda, Executive Director, Sustainable Development Center. Thanks for being with us tonight.
My pleasure.
And also joining us tonight on this discussion is Chima Christian, a public policy analyst, good governance advocate. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Right. The program, of course, will go the same way previous ones have. That means that at an appropriate time, you can get to be part of the discussion in the studio. When that time comes, we'll reacquaint you with the procedures. But for now, let's go into the discussion proper. And this is all about the prolonged ASU strike. It doesn't seem like this is about to go away anytime soon. But of course, from reports you would have heard tonight, the President has stepped in again and asked and given the Minister of Education 2 weeks within which to see to this whole issue. But let's talk about this. It's more than 5 months now, and we're wondering the impact of this on the education system and what this means for all those students who have to be sitting at home for more than 5 months. Dr. Mahmoud Osman, let's hear your views on this.
Well, it is very unfortunate that education is taking a terrible beating. But when you consider the problem started back in 2009, I don't know exactly what kind of agreement was reached in 2009. Is it 2009 or 2019? Anyway, 2009, I think. And it has been dragging all these years. And there have been almost 25 ASU strikes within the period. The victims of all this are our children, and not only our children, our country and our economy and our image. So whoever is responsible, both the government and ASU, I think they should have realized the danger they are heading the country to. I know when you are talking of negotiation, it must be in good faith. What is happening at the moment is a complete breakdown of communication between labor and the government. Whatever is happening in the negotiation, we are not privy to it. So it is what we read in the papers and what statements they release. But the fact that when government is dealing with ASU, they should also remember that ASU is the most well-informed labor union in the country. By its membership, it is the most elitist association government can ever deal, has ever met at any level. So when you are going to discuss with us, organization like ASU, you must be ready. You must do your homework, and whatever demand they make, you must read it carefully, word by word. Otherwise, you will do yourself injustice to yourself. And I think that's what is happening. But I think, going back memory lane, these problems we are having with ASU, once in a while we also have problems with other unions. As far as government is concerned, I think the missing of National Labor Advisory Council is what is causing all this. Because the government ministers have no business sitting with unions negotiating. When National Labor Advisory Council was in existence, under head of service, different heads of service I can remember in those days, immediately a problem is about to start, they call attention, a meeting is held, and parties are convinced to slow down, and the issues are discussed and solved privately. And you never have this kind of long time strike. Universities system is collapsing. Children are at home. They are on their own. Some have taken to small businesses. Some have gone to farm. Some are just idle, being paid by their parents. Unfortunately, some will also be victim of the miscarriage in the society. So there has to be a way out of it. I that the government, with the kind of statement they issued today, not long ago, the people responsible, the ministries, should take their job this time around more seriously. And again, looking at my own background from the private sector, we have negotiations with our unions every two years or 3 years, depending on which particular organization. And we don't wait until problems come. Then we do fire brigade approach. Always government should be ahead of all these workers, because workers are government. Government are workers. Therefore, I will pray that this recommendation of today from Mr. President, it is not it is a command. It's not just a wish, it's a command. I hope those ministers will take it seriously and issue this problem, end this problem as soon as possible in the interest of everybody.
Thank you very much. We'll return to you, but let's come to Abuja here and Dr. Ahmed Sanda. Of course, the same question will put to you. More than 5 months now, and this is like an unending situation. What are your thoughts about it?
5 months. In financial terms, that translates to more than 35 billion naira of unproductive resources, which trickles down in terms of cause and effect, generating other businesses that are around those university campuses and other institutions of higher learning that people are dependent on daily sustenance. That's one thing that is lost in terms of financial productivity. Dr. Mahmoud used the word danger. To put this in clear perspective, before piecing them into small items, this is what's at play. This is what is at play. While ASU and the government are at the table, or not at the table, the productive force of Nigeria is lame. And what's the productive force? What is the major determinant of the productive force? It's the human capital. And this human capital is the accumulation of knowledge, education, experiences, and skills, which forms the basis of everything that happens here, whether in the private or the public sector. This translates to the judges, this translates to the civil servants themselves, the university lecturers, the businesses. So what's happening is that there's a dislocation of adding to the productive base of the nation, which before you reboot it, you're going to need much more than 35 billion naira. In economic terms, you may require about 350 billion naira to get us out of the hole. And there's a hole here. One aspect of it is that the light has been dimmed. We can't see very well. That's as a result of all these losses. But the other aspect of it, which is of great consequence, which portrays the danger we're talking about. For each and every student that is not going to school, when we have this transnational dislocation as a result of so many catastrophes right now, we are potentially losing people to all sorts of crises. I can give an example. Somebody that works in the building, in my building, his niece who goes to school, married. This is how typically intergenerational poverty is transmitted, right? She's leaving school because she started a trade, and this trade that she's doing right now, in speaking to them, she's never ever going to go back to school. The fact that she's not going back to school and she's married to a night watchman means technically that poverty is going to be transmitted, because what are the things that actually breeds intergenerational transmission of poverty? It actually starts with the woman, and I'm a very big fan of women, right? She doesn't go back, and then she starts a small trade, which is just subsistence, and that carries through her kids, and that carries through. What we're potentially doing, any reaction that we evoke as a result of this discussion, whether it is anger, from passion, or laughter, it's all understandable, because what we're denying ourselves, we're denying Nigeria or Africa. Nigeria, the Okonjo-Iwealas of this world, the Amina Mohammed, and all those other people. So that's one aspect that while government and ASU are sitting down and prolonging this debate, this is what is happening. Take it further again. We go back. Let's assume that the president's orders are followed. We go back to school in 2 weeks' time. For the lecturers to get themselves back to catch up on the missing times, a lot of shortcuts would have to happen. A lot of rush work will have to happen. What happens, Cyril, is that we see it every day, and it's printed in the newspapers every day, that a problem happens and you see the civil servants, the public servants, or the people at the private sector trying to rush and cut corners. Do you think that's a learned behavior? It's actually a taught behavior. Because that's what's going to happen as soon as they go back to school. They are going to so try to rush back what they've missed that corners might be cut. So while these sets of people are negotiating, and that's an important word that Dr. Mahmoud discussed, which I think more often than not, the definition of negotiation is always lost in a room where you don't have a mixed balance of perspectives. That mixed balance of perspective just simply means that all the people in that room negotiating don't see the big picture. They see the small picture and then they posture. But if you see the big picture, then you will see that negotiation, it's not about what he gets or what I'm given. It is what is acceptable to me and what I will fight to pay. If I go to the market to buy tomato and they say to me it's 20 naira, and I know I have kids at home that I have to feed, one way or the other, I'm going to negotiate to a price that is acceptable to me. But once you begin to say, oh, he's going to be getting so much, then the essence of negotiation is defeated. So I'll just tap over right there.
Yeah, good you brought the economic aspect to it and the rest of it. Well, let's come to Chima Christian and put just the same question to you. What are you thinking about this period that the students have been out of school and the face-off continues? It's increasingly looking like who's going to blink first?
Before the month's interregnum, where you are talking about negotiations between the ASU and the federal government, you had COVID-19. And the double catastrophe with Nigerian version of COVID-19 is that students in other climes where you had digital access penetrated into the society were having online classes. Universities began to find ways to reach their students even while they were doing the lockdown. Nigeria didn't have that access except for few private universities. So students were completely shut down. And after that, it was no making of the federal government, it was no making of the ASU, it was also no making of the students. It was just an international catastrophe. And when you came out of COVID-19, countries rushed back to work. He was talking about catch-up. Students were rushed to catch up. Lecturers were rushed. And then after that, you jumped right into ASU strike. And so if you look at it from the perspective of a student, you see what it has done to their mental health. Because for some students who were just admitted in the nick of 2019, they've never been to a proper university class. They are now told that they should be in year 3, but they've never done one day of proper classes. And now they have 1 year to go. And you're going to rush them out and look at the quality we are producing from Nigerian University. And so that is one part of the thing, and that's not even my concern. My concern is that we are wasting these 5 months discussing unimportant issues. Because as far as I'm concerned, the conversation between ASU and the federal government is not about UTAS, it's not about IPPS, it's not about earned academic allowance.
Really?
Yes. The discussion that needs to be had is the future of education financing in Nigeria. It has come to that point where it's obvious to critical thinkers that the federal government cannot continue to run our education system the way it is. For most civilized climes, you have the government pay attention to basic education, primary school and senior secondary school, the way we call it here. That's where you lay the foundation for basic literacy. That's where you lay the foundation for basic numeracy. And then in modern times, that's where you also lay the foundation for digital literacy, basics. And then when you've laid that foundation that the person can interact, the person can count money, the person can live freely, can appreciate issues in a wider society, then you've given that person the basics. University education, and this is where Nigeria gets this wrong, because you are trying to mass produce university students and it cannot work. Because even in civilized climes, how many percentage of workforce in China are university educated? What is the percentage of the workforce in Germany, which is, by the way, an egalitarian society, are university educated? Why do you need a university education to be a bricklayer? Why do you need a university education to struggle for 4 years take a lot of bed spaces, take a lot of opportunities, take a lot of money from the system, and then you end up being a driver. And we know that Nigeria have continuously produced university graduates who end up being drivers. And I'm not saying that drivers or bricklayers are demeaning jobs. I am saying that the technical competence required to do certain things do not require you to go to school, to university. So once you have basic education sorted out, federal government should not be in the business of heavily subsidizing university education. And that's the important conversation that the federal government needs to sit down with ASU to say, we are developing a 10-year plan of transitioning from 100% funding of university education in Nigeria to say 30% funding. And then universities will have to develop modalities. This will not happen overnight. But I see in Nigeria going forward, because what you keep happening is that after 2 weeks they might come to the table and make one form of agreement or the other, but in the next 6 or 7 months, maximum 1 year. Because if you trace the history of this ASU strike, it started even before 2009. The earliest I got as I was preparing for this program is 1970 something. So you keep having, and there is no, for those of us in my generation, there has never been any 2-year cycle. People of my age has never had of an ASU strike. Never been. So a lot of young Nigerians in their numbers has never seen Nigerian universities work for a complete 4-year cycle. And that's a big problem. And we know that this problem is not the making of the federal government, because this is now becoming successive governments have tried. Because if you say that this government is bad, what of the previous ones? Successive governments, both military governments, in democracies from 1999, several administrations. The problem we are not addressing is that the government cannot heavily subsidize university education. What the government should do is to provide basic education, primary and secondary school, and then parents or students who want to offer or go for technical courses can now pay. In working universities, students pay high tuition. Here in Nigeria, we try to pay for the students, right? Because the cost of producing a university graduate, say engineering in Nigeria, is cheaper than cost of producing the same engineering student in China or in the United States. And then you look at the quality. A university-trained Nigerian engineer, a university-trained Chinese engineer, a university-trained Finnish or even a German engineer are they of the same quality. So in our efforts to carry more than we can, we have watered down the system, and that's where we come back every 4 months, 5 months, 6 years, or 1 year to discuss as an issue. Until the government discusses that funding plan, then this conversation will continue even into the next government.
Oh, well, let's look at another angle of the strikes, particularly in tertiary institutions, and it's just not with academic staff alone. You have non-academic staff joining in, and then you go down to the polytechnics, you also have the same issues. And it does seem, now we're putting this to you, Dr. Mahmoud Othman, it does seem as if the minute you achieve a semblance of an agreement with one of the unions, the others now take up arms and say, well, if you're talking about improved conditions, we also deserve improved conditions. Now the fact is, with the ASU strike, it is not just ASU alone that takes charge of the educational institutions. You have those who are the non-academic staff, and they're also flexing muscles. So why is this happening all the time, that every negotiation, every agreement does not go across board, and therefore some others in the system will now see it's time for us to have ours as well? It's like everyone wants to get their finger into the pie, and when you through the universities, you go to the polytechnics, and it's the same thing. So when will this cycle end?
You know, this common saying that what is good for the goose is good for the gander. So if you have a unionized labor system in a country, you have to be careful how you handle these situations. Government is aware with the problems. Even if we have gone through a lot of educational reforms, which really did not end into reforming anything positive. I think we just scattered education for whatever reason I cannot explain. It's not in my area of specialization. But I know in those days when skills acquisition was serious in Nigeria, we had craft schools. I can remember we have one in Kano, we have one in Ukuru, we have one in Kaduna, which became Kaduna Polytechnic. We have one in Ilorin, and that was for the whole big northern Nigeria. But people who are being taught trades, they can take care of what you call middleman power. Then when we had only Ahmad Bello University, it was serving this particular area according to our wish and the wish of government. Then we went on a spree. Some people say it's because we got oil money. So you set up university in every corner. You upgraded every secondary school into a university in some corners of the country. And the private sector are also coming with their own. Religious bodies are also setting up universities. And we are still complaining. And why do you go and multiply what you cannot carry? So we have universities that we are not funding properly. We don't have libraries in the universities. We don't have good laboratories in the universities. I had the privilege to go to one of the big universities in the country. And believe me, what I saw as library there was not as the good as the library we had in Berea College in the early 60s. So what kind of learning are you giving our children? So the problem is, once you have a university, that's why the word university, universe, is a conglomeration of a lot of things. Now we only ended up with four identifiable unions, from academic to non-academic to technical and so on and so forth. I think about 4 of them. Of course, you can't do good to one without replicating it to the others. It's a nature of justice. And the more we do that, the more others, like polytechnics, colleges of education, also say, what is wrong with you? We are here too. So government, all this time, I think we are going straight in our system up to the time we started structural adjustment program. Those people who applied SAF, they must have had some mantra from somewhere that you should curtail educational costing, or do whatever you have to do and reduce so and so, God knows what. But that's the price we are paying now. So we accumulated a lot of liabilities. We never planned to settle those liabilities, whether they are ASU or other institutions, because the hospitals are suffering too. All the classes go to states and see primary schools. The local governments and state governments have forgotten that they have primary school and secondary schools. No chairs to sit, no table. The blackboard is as white as my dress. But in those days, every semester, a blackboard is repainted black. When you come back from holidays, you find your blackboard. But teachers cannot even afford chalk. Those who will supply them with chalk are not giving them chalk. Ordinary chalk. Even though we have gone digital now, there should be no chalk anymore. But again, you go to states where they claim that even they are giving free education. But there are no exercise book, no textbook, and teachers are not paid. So ASU is only a privilege because they are very knowledgeable. They are our teachers, they are the teachers of our children, and they should be taken care of. And the worldwide, they have an idea what's going on elsewhere. So they are an enlightened lot. And to the best of my knowledge, when the going was good, when ASU became part of Nigerian Labour Congress, we didn't have problem with ASU. But when the government started making promises which they cannot fulfill. And that's when we started caught in trouble. And I think the problem is all these negotiations that have taken place is no more than a dialogue. It's not really a negotiation. It is now that they will negotiate because we have suffered enough, so the real negotiation take place. If it has to be tripartite, let it be tripartite. The government can seek help from professional human resources people. The public servants, by nature of their job, they are not really HR people. So if they are negotiating, they may not even remember the labor laws and the industrial arbitration court judgments and so on in place. But they think they have the power of government, therefore they can say whatever they like. And labor anywhere in the world does not accept something like that. So what I am suggesting is, let everybody calm down. I can assure you ASU is a very responsible association. What they are asking, have we taken time to analyze them carefully? If we are talking of this cost from million into billion into trillion, what did we allow it to accumulate? Because if we are doing this piece by piece at the right time, we are not going to squeeze ourselves in a dark corner like we are now. So the issue is, we take a realistic look at it, make a realistic proposal to ASU, seek the help of Nigerian Labour Congress and Trade Union Congress. They have a responsible leadership. They can understand. The issues are bigger than any one of us. Our children must go to school. They cannot continue at the state where they are. This time we are talking 5 months. Last year there was 6 months straight. Either last year or some years ago, there were 6 months ASU strike. There is no need for a single strike. I had the privilege of going to schools that I never witnessed one day strike. But the situation has changed. The society is now global. We are learning good manners and bad manners from our neighbors. In your sitting room, you are exposed to the whole world. And we have to be very careful what we are doing. I hope the government agents who are going to see the union next time around, please go with a clean hand. Let them trust you, because the problem now is lack of trust. ASU is not thinking that whoever they sit with will tell them the truth, because so many promises were broken earlier. And that's not how to go about it. A responsible government must always take responsibility for its action. Thank you very much.
We have a number of reports in addition to the discussion in the studio here. Let's take the first tonight from Enugu. It's by Chine Woyi. Right, having issues with that report. We'll get to it somehow. But back in the studio here with Dr. Ahmed Sanda. Well, now you talked about the cost implication of what's been lost in all these months. Again, the question of finance and funding is high up in the demands of ASU and, the arguments put forward by the federal government. You heard the Minister of Labour in that report, one of our reports, saying that putting all this together, we'll be looking at something in the excess of 1 trillion naira, which perhaps goes to say that it might not be possible for the government to expend that much in just one sector. And well, we had Christian Chima here say that there has to be a proper plan about funding education, because it's beginning to be obvious that the government cannot. But again, people would ask the question, why go into a negotiation with the body, knowing that you cannot fulfill those terms?
To answer this question, let me start by saying that both the government and, I'm afraid, the ASU are understating the value of education by just speaking about it in financial terms. Right? From the point of view of ASU, we know for every lost day, every lost month, the brain is weakened because it's not active. Research are not being conducted. So many things sets in. They are also not happy psychologically. To the population, statistics don't lie. We know that the more education people acquire, the more they move out of poverty, because there's a direct correlation between poverty and education. The more people are educated, people move out of hunger. There's also a direct correlation between that. And if you go higher to what we're talking about right now, which is the universities, statistically speaking, every additional year that somebody goes to school potentially adds 10% to his income. So why shouldn't people go to school? And that's why I said they are both understating the value of education, even for themselves. Right? If you take it a notch higher and put this in a different perspective, the government on its own side, while you see the combination of the institutional representation in all those negotiations, Accountant General's Office, Ministry of Education, Labor, that's a good combination of people of institutions. But then the question that begs an answer is, who are those representing the government when it comes to that negotiation? My understanding when it comes to mediation is that you have those body of people to really, really look at the arguments or look at the numbers, and then they go back to the drawing board to say, these are the things that we can afford. Up till now, from the government side, I've not heard a counter proposal, and I've not heard them holding ASU to some other accounts to say, if we give you this, we expect this to happen, or ABCD to happen. With all due respect to every Nigerian, right? There are times that the airwaves are taken over by all sorts of discussions, like inimical behaviors in the campuses that are bad for the society. So when you come to negotiation, what we hear the government always saying is that we can't afford this, we can't. Understandably, what can you afford? But what do you require from ASU? Because a negotiation is a two-way street, where if I'm able to pay this, really the productive workforce of the country should go to this, and this should ABCD should add to the economy. And as far as expanding access to education, believe you me, there is no alternative to that, because the population of Nigeria is 200 million. 1970 was 55 million. We can't go back, or we can't stop or reduce the access to education. That's a no-go area, and I'll give you examples why. And something fantastic is happening to our systems right now. You have a lot of people retiring from government, from service, and what are they doing? They are going back to school to earn postgraduate degrees, to earn PhDs. And what do they go back? They go back into teaching, right? But that's as a result of expanded access to education. And the alternative to that is what? While in many other clients you have, of course, you have the Harvards, you have the Yales, you also have other universities that are not as sophisticated. But what do they provide? The simple thing they provide is for the people that are worse off to also get an education that would move them away from hunger or poverty, to the extent that 10% increment in income, the chances are available for them for that to happen. So the argument that we're seeing from both sides, while there are merits and there are, because it's a conversation and it's a negotiation. And to answer your question earlier, one of the things you were saying, this conversation would always continue. This debate will always continue. Why would it continue? Because there is inadequate planning. And this is not only in the education sector. Unfortunately, it's so glaring in the education sector as it is with this protracted strike. The planning aspect of it is so weak that if this doesn't happen, then we'll say that it's a miracle. But the responsibility goes far beyond what happens in the classroom. But now, going back to Dr. Mahmoud and the negotiation strategy, and I'll speak about this reading from the history of 1972 to what's happening right now. You have an association that is quite structured, organized, with a lot of credibility. And what do? They sit down in their congregation or their congress and then have a position and then forward it to the government. Forwarding this to the government, it's not so much of a negotiation. They're just presenting their terms because the people that are there are only presenting it, but they can't debate the issue. They have to go back to their bodies to say, this is A, B, C, D. They are given little window to do some negotiation, but anything outside that, they have to go back, which means you can see an avenue where things have to prolong. And then from the government's point of view, more than anything, as it's represented over the airwaves, you see a lot of posturing. And it's the absence of adequate substance that people lead into posturing. But thank God, if I may, with some degree of hopefulness, somebody has to take ownership of these problems. Who is taking ownership?
Okay. Well, we'll return to our report now from Enugu, put together by Chine Uye.
Level, we are still taking our exams. We are still happy. We've entered 200 level, taking our exams. They called the strike. And after the strike, we are moving into the exams immediately without anything being taught. Nothing was actually taught.
So like two sets of people that are meant to come inside the school, but because of this ASU strike, it's going to slow down a lot of things.
These students, just like many others, are bearing the brunt of the lingering strike by the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU. For about 5 months now, they have remained at home with no academic activities, and the end of the strike seemed not to be in sight. There has been a series of meetings between the federal government, leaders of the union, and other key players with a view to ending the strike, but the union leaders have been extending the duration of the strike, saying it was to give the federal government enough time to meet their demands.
So the last time lecturers in Nigerian university system, the last time their salary was increased, was reviewed, was 13 years ago, 2009. And from that time till now, nobody, government also has been on government to review the salary structure of the union. And also hardly goes on strike because of salary. This is the only strike in the recent time that also went solely on the strike.
The striking lecturers are not having a good time themselves.
Even lecturers, our children are here. Our children are part of the school system. Our children are at home. And the worst is that presently, federal government has stopped the salaries of lecturers since March.
The other bearing socio-economic influence of the ASU strike is not only felt by the students, but by the society and national life.
2 million young people released into the community. And then these 2 million, uncontrolled energies, so you have rape, you have armed robbery, because these are young people who work with their peers, and there's a lot of peer group influence.
Government must regard education as a top priority. Educational staff should not see strike as the first course of reaction.
Worried by the fact that Nigerian students should get educated, President Muhammadu Buhari, while receiving some politicians in his residence in Daura last week Monday, urged the striking lecturers to call off their strike, telling them that enough is enough and that they should sympathize with the people and the country. It is hoped that these statements by the president would sink into the ears of the striking lecturers and make them understand that the future of education in Nigeria will be bleak if the strike continues. In Enugu, Chinenye Nwoye.
We're looking at some of the issues that are at stake here, and there's this matter of a payment platform where ASU insists that it must have its own payment platform, UTAS, turning down the IPPIS, which a majority of federal government employees are on. And the question has also been asked, where does an employee determine the platform on which they get paid by the employer? And that's another bit about it. There's also the controversy over the integrity of the system. ASU insists that what they have developed is better than the IPPIS. Well, we also have reports that that system also failed an integrity test by NIDA. Then, of course, others outside ASU have said, look, even if you accept UTAS, we are not going to accept that. Let the lecturers alone. We have our own platform. And now, what if everyone asks for a platform? I mean, perhaps
NTA staff will ask for their platforms too.
Exactly. So, where is that leading us?
Well, you don't want to open a can of worms, and then you don't want to open those things. But when people talk to me, what I look beyond is the exact words they say. I peel off those conversations and track back and say, when you have conversation about UTAS and IPPIS, what I hear is that I don't trust the government. The employees are saying, I don't trust my employer. So trust is the critical issue that has broken down. And that's why the lecturers don't have confidence in the payment platform. The government also does not have confidence in the alternate payment platform designed. So where you have an atmosphere of mutual distrust, that tells you also why the conversations have lingered without any outcome in sight. And without this trust, because if a government has continuously broken its promises, and not just this government, successive governments, because as at the time they entered those promises, there is no capacity to implement them. Because when you look at what is the motivation of a politician, he has a 4-year tenure. If he does well, he'll be elected for another 4-year tenure. And you're asking him for questions. Look at now where several months into the election, the government does not want to look bad. The government does not want to look unpopular. So sometimes you reluctantly cede for the public appearance of it what you know you cannot implement.
But then on the part of the other side too, knowing that what you're getting into is improbable, why do you insist?
Why do you insist? Because university must be funded properly. Look, I understand ASU. In fact, it is only on this strike that they are debating UTAS, IPPIS, and their salary. In other strikes, they are debating more than that. They are debating for more funding for education, right? You see, you cannot have a university or a thinking in Nigeria where the government seems to be responding to university education demands by mass producing or mass admitting or mass minting of university undergraduates who have comparatively little to no real life skills or hands-on skills. And that's what the lecturers are looking at and are crying. That you are not paying us, we cannot function. The university system is not functioning. You need to go to a university these days. For a class that is designed for 40, you see that class sitting 250 students with no public address system. Although you can say you can make the same argument for Nigerian correctional facility, you can make the same argument for Nigerian healthcare system, you can make the same argument for transport system, where a road that is supposed to take 500 vehicles is taking 3,000 vehicles, and every evening you have. So you can make the same argument. But the thing is that university system is collapsing, and the main thing is that it must be funded. The question we should now ask is who will fund it? That brings back to the first argument. You see, because I admit and I understand the role of education in lifting people out of poverty. But the basic line is this, that what do you intend to get out of education? Teachers will tell you it's 3 hours. They say it's reading, it's arithmetic, and I think it's writing. Once you possess, and then the fourth essential is reasoning. Once you pass through an efficient primary school system, if you pass through an efficient secondary school system, you should have this. But even the university system that we're fighting and killing each other over, you still pass your primary school, your secondary school, your university education, you still don't have the 4. You see a lot of university graduates and students cannot write properly, cannot speak properly, cannot reason properly, don't have life-saving skills. And then again, you track back. The era of thinking with the university system is that, oh, let us produce students or graduates who will go and look for jobs. Those jobs are no longer there. And if you read World Bank reports, they say they report the workplace of the future. It's no longer the workplace where you have a big conglomerate and you have thousands and thousands of workers. It is now SME dependent. Some of the leading SMEs today, you don't need university education to run them. You don't need university education. If you have a good primary and secondary education, you don't need university education to be a baker. You don't need university education to do my dress, except if you're going into technical. And then there are jobs that would require technical competencies, and that's where you have professions who are, that's how, because it's a pyramid. You have the base, give them the basic, let everybody start from the same slate, give them the ability to read, ability to write, ability to reason. If you give them the basic, then people, water will begin to find their level. People who have inclination in sports will move to sports. People who want cooking will go to cooking. You don't need a PhD to cook or to run a restaurant. You don't need that. But you might need a PhD to become a nutritionist, right? So you choose where you want to. But the insistence on rushing everybody to the top, and in effect, you are neglecting primary education, you are neglecting secondary education, and once you have defective primary, defective secondary, the people you are pushing into the university does not have the basic to even take what they are going to be given. And then you must, so we are in an educational loop. We are training people for jobs that no longer exist, and we have a different model for looking at it. I'll end with this point. There are alternatives for young people, and I'm glad that fellow young people are taking that. The advent of internet technology has provided ample opportunity, not for all Nigerians now, because I understand there are a lot of Nigerians living where there are no access to the internet. But for some of us, and for some people who have access to internet, there are several courses you can, like, what do you hear about students? Are people talking about coding, web design, UI UX design, app design, and all those opportunities that exist in the digital ecosystem? You don't need university degrees to learn these skills. In fact, you can go to university and stay for 4 years and come out no skill. But there are platforms that offer you 4 weeks courses, 8 weeks courses, short courses, and the alternative, you are not talking about this, is where you can go and learn carpentry, learn this thing. And I listened to Dr. a colleague in the other studio talk about technical education. There are fabrics, metal workers. You need to have technical education. You don't have to spend 4 years to learn these things. These are skills you can learn for 4 years, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 1 year. Why do you have to put people through university for 4 years to learn things that they can learn in 8 weeks, and then you cannot fund it?
All right. We'll take a break here at this point, and when we return, there'll be more on the prolonged ASU strike. And the lines will be open, which means you can get to join the discussion in the studio. So stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly.
Every one of us is affected by the circulation of illicit small arms and light weapons in our communities. Our beloved ones, breadwinners, farmlands and livelihoods are lost. Our homes are lost. Even young children are not left out. These weapons cause pains and sufferings, devastating our societies. It is our collective duty as every Nigerian stakeholder, religious or community leaders, traditional rulers, or civil societies, and at every level of governance to work with security agencies to stop the proliferation of illicit arms. We must shun the trafficking or possession of illicit arms. We must reject any inducement to help in its transportation. We must report all suspected individuals or groups involved in the smuggling or stockpiling of small arms and light weapons or illicit arms to the nearest security agency for prosecution, as our government is very determined to end this menace. Let us come together and work for safe and secure Nigeria. This message is brought to you by the National Center for the Control of Small Arms and Light Weapons.
The 157-kilometer Lagos-Ibadan Railway is the first double-track standard gauge railway to be built in West Africa. The Mobolaji Johnson train station is a masterpiece, an infrastructure that is gradually becoming an iconic building in Lagos State. The modern facilities put the station on a world map of train stations. Likewise, other new train stations across the country built to world-class standards. The train and its convenience is indeed an admirable effort, with commendations from Nigerians.
This is the station that we have to commend the federal government for putting a beautiful face, empowering us in Lagos State, not only in economic and political arena.
I can say that I'm really impressed with the infrastructures in place. Kudos to the Minister of Transportations. Kudos to the federal government.
Truly, good things are coming out of Nigeria, and the federal government is deserving of all the applause.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. We start off now with another of our reports. This one is from Kaduna and it's by Dauda Muhammad.
The impact of the 6-month-old industrial action by ASU across tertiary institutions has taken its toll on socio-economic life of students, parents, lecturers and others that depend on the schools for livelihood. Once vibrant markets on various campuses like the one in Kaduna University are deserted.
We get our needs in this place, and because of this strike, it's affecting us seriously that we could barely eat.
The socio-economic implications of the strike, it's not only on the students. Don't forget that the lecturers have not been paid for the first 4 months. The business owners in the campuses are also affected by the strike.
Meetings have regularly been held towards ending the strike, but to no avail.
The idea is to see how we compel our governments to inject more funds to revitalize this university so that they can compete even at minimum level. We are not even saying we want them to create Harvard University in Nigeria or to create IMT in Nigeria.
From all indications, the only solution requires concession from both parties.
The government, whatever promise they make to us, they should try as much as possible to fulfill it. And ASU should just take it easy and maybe just reduce the rate at which they go on strike.
Simply, the government should honor its own sides of the promise or its own sides of the agreement.
As the industrial action enters the 7th month, the hope is for schools to reopen soon. Dauda Mohammed.
And from Ekiti, we have this next report by Kola Adibobui.
It is no longer news that the Academic Staff Union of Universities have been on industrial action for months now and are still bent on being done to until government meet their demands. This has continued to take its course on university education across the country, of which Ekiti State is not exempted. This, some stakeholders believe, does not take into consideration the interest of younger Nigerians who are aspiring for quality education. Lack of interest in the educational system, increase in immorality and crime are some of the issues raised by respondents as some precarious effects and overbearing influence of the recurring university strike. As the saying goes, an idle brain is the devil's workshop.
Proficiency in one's career. Definitely you now find that companies here and there will now begin to employ half-baked products who are not actually properly tutored because of strike. Again, the students themselves are even no more enthusiastic because once you are admitted, you don't even know the end of the road, no matter how studious you are, no matter how serious academically you are.
To the 26-year-old Muyoluwa Adesheun, a 100 level of Theatre Arts Department of the Ekiti State University, the strike has been a major challenge as age is not on its side.
On me personally, is delay because we are not getting any younger. Costs that we are supposed to spend 4 years on, we'll be spending over 6-7 years. It's not bringing any advantage. In fact, it has been very frustrating.
Respondents are unanimous in their assertion that the effect of the strike has been devastating to the Nigerian university system as it waters down the quality of education offered to students, and survey shows that majority of students usually perform poorly in examinations upon disruption from prolonged strike.
It has an adverse effect on the educational system of the children, and even the country at large is now becoming part of the system of education in Nigeria, that after strike is part of must occur one time or the other. It wasn't like this.
With regards to extending their time we spent in school, look at it that the education is not even of importance, especially
the university community, because it encompasses various facets of life. You have supermarkets here and there, life booming, where people make their earnings through petty trading here and there. The 5 months now, which means they're out of job too. Again, the economy.
Although some of the demands of the university lecturers bordering on recurring issues of underfunding of the education sector, which has an impact on the quality of infrastructure, instructional resources, and research. Respondents are of the opinion that the Academic Staff Union of Universities should explore other viable means of protest than strike due to the enormous damage it does to the educational system, aside the overbearing socio-economic influence on students, the society, and the nation. In Ado Ekiti, Kola Adebabuyi.
All right, this segment, the phone lines are open, means you can get to be part of the discussion in the studio. And we always say this every Tuesday: if you're calling in and your call gets through, do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set. That's the way to avoid the hurlback or the echo. And we also like to encourage that if you call in and your call gets through, go straight to the point. Don't waste too much time on greetings. Simple hello, that's fine enough. And go straight to it so others can also get on the platform and air their views. It's all about the prolonged ASU strike, the impact on education, the future of Nigerian students, and so many other issues. We've looked at it from so many angles, the economic angle, and for the fact that people are being churned out with little or no skills, and this is all part of the problems that we have here. And you talked about having researched into strikes dating as far back as 70s, and well, it's been something that people have had to live with all this while. More than 30 years ago, I did a program on ASU strike. I'm doing one now. It does speak to what's been going on. How can Nigeria get out of this quagmire? All right, people are already on the line. We have Ben from Abuja. Hello, Ben. Go ahead. Ben, are you with us? Hello, Ben from Abuja.
Hello, sir. Good evening, sir. This is Benji from Abuja.
Ben from Abuja.
Yeah.
Right, go ahead.
Okay, sir. You see, when you have people at the helm of affairs who doesn't have university experience, they don't care whether there's a progress in that sector or not. Show me a country that is developed, that has good economic growth, and I will tell you a country that has good and standard education. We are where we are today as a result of the levity we gave to our education. When you educate a mind, you educate a nation. When you educate the people, you remove poverty from that society. Because education has to do with reasoning. You think outside the box. If you have a quality education, you will think on how to live your life. In fact, you might not even depend on what the government have to offer as a result of employment. You think beyond that as a result of education you have. Education is not meant to just inform you. It is meant to transform you. It is meant to transform your reasoning. Our government did not know this. How much is our politicians have been paid? How much are they being paid? If you judge the amount of money that go into few hands in this country, compared to what ASU is asking for, it's just a ratio of 1/100. You cannot jettison education and expect you are going to have a good result. No, it's not possible. Education transforms a nation. Education transforms the people. Our politicians are governing here with different type of car. You think these people are not seeing it? You can see a nobody in National Assembly. You know how much they are earning?
All right. Thank you very much, Ben, calling in. Yeah, well, there are so many arguments, but some of them sometimes you have to interrogate further. Well, would it be just that people at the helm do not appreciate education? We've seen people at the helm who were former university teachers themselves, who were members of ASU, and yet they failed to reach agreements with their own colleagues. Does that argument, does it hold water?
Well, to me, it doesn't, because when you get in there, for instance, even the current ASU chairman, take him from the ASU chairman and make him the Minister of Labour and Productivity, his side to the story will change. Because when you get into there, you begin to see the enormous responsibility of what is called government. Because at the time you are making demands, security people are making demands, education is making demands, infrastructure, you have a whole lot of making similar demands at the same time. It now comes down to priority. What do you prioritize? And then each one is making pressing demands and even willing to go on strike for 7 months to press home their demands. Yet you don't have the resources to attend to them. So it's a matter of what you see is as a result of where you sit.
Right. Well, we're talking about the university education right now, which by all means is very important. We are proud in Nigeria as a result of a report that goes around, it's viral right now, about Nigerians being the most educated set of immigrants in America. And an economic study has shown how much they remit back to the country. And the pressure it lifts up foreign exchange, whereby a large swath of people there's capital flight, but then we have this group of educated immigrants in America in terms of PhD, masters, the statistics are there. They are making us proud, right? And what university education does actually increases the chances of you becoming a global citizen and raises the profile of the country beyond what, with all due respect to everybody, beyond what a president, a senate president, a governor can do. Just an individual, right? So the complements of literacy, which my brother is saying, is actually, it's what we are talking about. But at basic level, literacy is important. It's a necessary, if not the most important complement to university education. But it's not about trade-off, this or that. Because the responsibility of leadership is to solve problems.
Okay.
And plan.
All right. Let's ask you to pause a while and get back to the phones. We have Emmanuel who's calling in from Lagos. Emmanuel, go ahead. Emmanuel from Lagos. Okay. We've lost that call. So, we'll just let you conclude that, and then we'll go over to Dr. Mahmoud Osman in Kanu.
And yes, and I was just going to let me jump into the other question you asked earlier on, between the employer and the employee. In terms of setting the salaries, it's really not the place of the employee to say that this is what I'm going to be paid. But do they have, in the context of free society, to ask, negotiate and demand? Yes, they do. If they feel that the pay is not commensurate to the service that they provide. Let's not forget, they're producing the doctors. They are producing the engineers. They are producing the people that are teaching the younger ones as well. Do you understand? But now, from the point of view of the government too, like I said, and I'm going to repeat this, we actually have not heard the counter offers from the government in terms of holding the university system to account on so many things that can actually fix the society. You talked about quality of education earlier. There are so many things that are responsible to that. We also know there are favors to grades. And so many other things. In terms of infrastructure, of course, just randomly go into any university, you know that the capacity of infrastructure is inadequate to cater for the number of students. So all these things are, there's a failure of planning at some point from every side of the argument.
Okay. Back to the phones. Ikechukwu from Oka.
Yes. First of all, and it's important that we people stop themselves. And most of them, the things that as we told them that they have reason of strike. But when you look into some people, they will look at about the content of and my brother, the truth of the matter is that like the prophecy to have it. And we strike all the time. Shows that especially the active president and really the importance of education. It is clear that the man does not know the impact. Because this is not the only option they would have followed. I'm in the system. The main reason these people are on strike is because of IT. What is the essence of IT? Essence of IT is to come and remove corruption in the university. Before now, these people who employ they will employ the girlfriend. And when students will graduate from the same university, coming to come and they know what they will say their job. They will be employing without interview, without advert. They will be sending appointment letters to their different houses without interview. So I think what I think is this here is so because the role in the platform is not the dynamically. But this one doesn't want that. They want to be employed from the platform. They want to be doing God's work of the team.
Alrighty, Ikechukwu. I'm afraid our line's not very clear, and quite a lot of what you had to say we missed out there trying to decipher. Actually, the audio is poor, but we'd like to encourage you to call in again. Maybe it would be a lot clearer when you do call again. But let's go over to Kanu and once again join Dr. Mahmoud Osman, who's in our Kanu studio. And yes, I heard this evening the president yet again saying this matter must be seen through in 2 weeks. and then he's put together those who are responsible for that, the Minister of Education, and he says his Chief of Staff and the Labour representatives must also be at those meetings. So we're looking at getting something tangible out in 2 weeks' time. Do you see this happening? Because, well, there are still the skeptics who would say, look, if it's taken 5 months, what's the new thing that's been given now to get this thing through in 2 weeks?
Well, you see, the problem is that from the pages of newspapers, we have an idea of the list of demands from ASU to government. And I think we have been reading that for many years now. The only language we hear from the government is government cannot afford it, or the so and so demand is unreasonable. But that doesn't really reflect serious negotiation. Government is supposed to study the demands one by one, come with its own response accordingly. Labor unions anywhere in the world, they don't make a demand and then you come to the table and you say, forget about this one, it's not going to happen. That's not negotiation. That is diktat. And I think what Mr. President would like to happen, it's possible if there is a will. I'm glad at least the Chief of Staff to the President, who was also an academic, is very familiar with what the university system is all about. I'm not saying that the others in the team are not, but at least I have confidence in the Chief of Staff. I don't know who is leading the team, but so far, from what we have been reading in the papers, what has happened in the past was not really a negotiation. And I even hear some words like collective bargaining. I don't know when government started collective bargaining, but whatever it is, collective bargaining is a very serious business in private sector, and we take it religiously. We don't play with it. When it is time to discuss, we discuss. The unions know themselves, they come with their demands, and they know the reality on the ground. Those that we can afford, we tell them the truth. Those that we can, we go ahead. We even go ahead and do things that they did not ask for. But when you are talking of education in Nigeria, the rot was allowed to happen a long time ago. So cleaning the union task is not easy. It's a Herculean job. Whether government has money or not, the little it has, in good faith, if it can pay us who can understand. All other things as we are asking, all these EPs or UTAs or whatever, I think they are just a byproduct of the failure of what happened in the past. If their salaries and allowances were coming to them when due, they will not even think of what platform the payments are coming from. The average worker, if he's supposed to get alert every 20th of the month, he keeps getting alert in his chosen bank. What is his business? Who prepared the voucher? You will not start looking for it. But the day things happened, then somebody has to answer. There will be scapegoats somewhere, either imagined or real. So Mr. President has given a direction. 2 weeks is just like tomorrow. Will come and pass. And those who are responsible, it is their duty now to show the way forward.
We have Faisal calling in from Kaduna. Hello.
Hello.
Right, go ahead, Faisal.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Yes, Faisal. Well, I think you're having challenges with your connections there. Well, 2 weeks. Like Dr. Mahmoud Osman said, it's like tomorrow. It'll pass so quickly. Can we look forward to something coming out of this 2 weeks? With everyone involved, ASU, the government side, including the Secretary to Government of the Federation, the Minister of Education, and the Ministry of Labour and Employment.
Given what we know about these governments, I am fairly confident that they will address and get the teachers to get back to classroom in that time frame or slightly after that. That's number one. But what I look at it is that you're just merely putting bandage on the injury. You are merely addressing the symptoms. You are merely kicking the can further down the road. And because when I say government should not take on the 100% responsibility or nearly 95% responsibility in training our university undergraduates, so next logical question should be, who is responsible for paying for university education? Since if we had all your money, the government can say, oh, we're paying for all the students in Nigeria who want to get into university. Go read any course of your choice, we're paying. All you have to do is to bring a token and then we'll match the rest. Today, those funds are no longer there. So who should pay for university education? Now, to find this answer, it is not my own answer. You go and look at where are university systems working well. Go and find the countries, whether in Southeast Asia, whether in Europe, whether in America, where are university systems working well? And who are the people paying for those universities to work well? And there you find your answer. And for the most part of it, it is the students and their benefactors who pay for the university education. A lot of people would argue now and say things are so tight, so difficult, that the burden of an average parent is so high that further inflicting the cost of education of their children in words is it's something that you shouldn't even consider in the first place. Now, how would you respond to that? I'm a pragmatist, I'm a realist, and this will not be so palatable to socialists or people who believe in, but again, I understand, and that's why you don't have to you have to phase out your implementation of this. Okay. You can say, for instance, school fees adjusted by inflation should ordinarily increase. Adjusted by inflation. Yeah. Adjusted by inflation, because the cost of running those universities are increasing. Yes, you can say Nigeria is a civil service dependent society, but that's that. Now, but there should be phased. For instance, we can say every 5 years or every 3 years, there should be a 25% increment in school fees, tuition fees of students, until you get to a point where these university systems can run comfortably on a minimal government subvention. And that's where, but this is not something you can just implement immediately. This is something that you have to sit down, analyze and plan, and set the plan in motion. Because while our parents or school children or school students listening to me say, why will I pay for my university education? Why is the government not paying? And the same question is the question you ask us. For instance, when you have a child, from age 0 to toddler, you take care of the child. In this case, the federal government is the father, the benevolent father. But at a certain point, you say, child, I love you, but you have to learn how to walk on your feet. Read. I've taught you how to write. I've taught you how to reason. You know your arithmetics. I've taught you how to count. Anything you want to do extra with this basic I've given you, you have to find a way around it. Okay. Well, Barry is calling in from Akure. Hello, Barry.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
I really appreciate for this show that come up this evening. Due to what Mr. Christian has said, in fact, I was so very, very happy here. In the educational system that people don't value today is somehow unfair. Even if you went to NYC camp for a graduate, a club member, to even spend simultaneously, it become a problem. because they have neglected the primary and secondary background. We have just produced thousands of graduates. Now, people in National Assembly, they don't care. All of them have their children outside the country. They don't care anything about Nigerian education. It's very, very upset. These are the things that we need to check. How are they feeling?
All right, Barry. I appreciate your sentiment, but I'd be a little more careful with the generalization to say all members of the National Assembly have all their children in school. So, Brand, you hear Nigerians say these things all the time. I guess it's just it's a measure of the frustration they feel about the schools not being open. But strictly speaking, such generalizations don't I mean, they don't carry really. It's not everyone who puts their children. I mean,
absolutely, and actually betrays the process of finding solutions.
Right.
And really, we have to be a bit much more intellectually uncomfortable in terms of getting to making difficult decisions. Now, if you look at both sides of the aisle, one side is saying, oh, there's so much wastages in the system. By you just closing some of those loopholes, you'll be able to relatively fund some systems if you prioritize them. But the part that is giving this argument, there's a lot of wastages in those institutions by themselves. Do you understand? And it's not about finger pointing, and that's what betrays the process of all these negotiations from both from both of them. Right? Now, in today's world, again, the linkage, which is quite strong in any society between science and policy, even policy for education, has to be strong. But in this situation, the linkage is actually quite weak as a result of so many things from within the institutions and the polity itself. How do we strengthen that so that we can become much more creative? To the extent that so many things are distributed for us to feel just little pains collectively.
Okay.
So that things can, move up.
Okay. Let's join Kingsley calling in from Benin. Hello, Kingsley. Let's hear you.
Good evening. I want to contribute about this our leader, because they did not care about the education, because their students is not going to school yet. That is why. After the strike, since how many months now, they did care about it, but they are thinking about their political ambition. It's not fair. They should look about it. This is our government we have this present now. Thank you very much.